The day my mother knocked on my door, I almost didn't recognize her. 9 years will change a person. But what shocked me more than the gray threading through her hair or the deep lines carved around her mouth was the look on her face, not guilt, not remorse, not an apology forming on her lips. It was something colder than all of those things. It was expectation. She needed something from me. And she had driven 4 hours to get it. My name is Claire Whitfield, or at least it used to be. I go by Claire Okafor now, and I have for almost a decade. That name is the one printed on my children's birth certificates, on my mortgage papers, on every single piece of my life that actually matters. But to my mother, to my father, to my 2 brothers and the extended family that gathered every Thanksgiving in my grandmother's farmhouse in rural Tennessee, that name was a disgrace, a betrayal, an embarrassment they couldn't stomach. I grew up in a small town where everyone looked the same, thought the same, and expected everyone else to do the same. My family wasn't violent or openly hateful. They were the polite kind of prejudiced, the kind who would smile at your face and say something quietly devastating the moment you turned away. They called it keeping to your own kind. They called it tradition. They called it just how things are. I met Marcus at 24, at a graduate school orientation in Nashville. He walked into that room wearing a blue blazer with a quiet confidence that made half the room turn their heads. He wasn't loud about it. He just was fully, unapologetically himself. We ended up seated beside each other by accident, and within 10 minutes we were arguing respectfully about Toni Morrison. By the end of that first week, I knew I was in trouble. Not the bad kind. The kind that rewires you permanently. We dated for 2 years before he proposed. 2 years of me slowly, carefully, naively trying to prepare my family. I brought him up in conversations. I showed them photographs. I talked about how brilliant he was, how kind, how he called his mother every Sunday without fail and remembered every small thing I mentioned in passing. My mother would nod and smile and say things like, "He sounds like a nice young man," in a tone that meant absolutely nothing. When Marcus got down on one knee in the restaurant where we'd had our first official date, I said yes before he finished a sentence. I called my mother from the parking lot, still crying from happiness, ring on my finger. Marcus's hand wrapped around mine. She was quiet for a very long time. Then she said, "Claire, you know we can't come to that wedding." I thought I'd misheard her. "What? Your father and I talked about this. We've been talking about it for a while, actually. We love you. But we can't support this, Mom." My voice cracked. "He's the person I love. He's going to be my husband. Then I guess you've made your choice," she said. And she hung up. My father didn't call at all. My older brother texted me 2 days later, "You're really doing this?" When I said yes, he didn't respond again. My younger brother, Ryan, the one I was closest to, the one who'd cried at my college graduation, the one who used to call me just to talk, sent me a single message that I still know by heart. "I'm sorry, Claire. I can't go against Mom and Dad. I hope you understand." I didn't understand. I don't think I ever fully will. Marcus held me that night while I sobbed into his chest, and he didn't say "I told you so," even though he could have. He didn't say anything for a long time. Then, quietly, he said, "You don't have to choose this. I would never ask you to lose your whole family for me." That was the moment I knew I was making the right decision. Because a man who would give me an out, who would rather carry his own heartbreak than watch me carry mine, that man was worth every sacrifice they were demanding I make. We got married on a Saturday in October. Small and beautiful, surrounded by Marcus's family and our friends. His mother, Adiz, pulled me into a hug at the reception that lasted a full minute. She smelled like lavender and something warm I couldn't name, and she whispered in my ear, "You are my daughter now. Don't ever forget that." I never did. The years that followed were the fullest of my life. Marcus finished his doctorate. I built a career in educational consulting. We bought a house in Atlanta with a yard big enough for our daughter, Zora, to run herself breathless every evening. When our son, Eli, came along 3 years later, we converted the study into a nursery and stayed up until 2 in the morning painting the walls a deep, soft blue. I missed my family every single day. There's no version of healing from that kind of rejection that doesn't leave a permanent mark. But I built something real, something mine. And slowly, I stopped waiting for the phone to ring. Then 9 years after my wedding, on a Tuesday morning in March, a car I didn't recognize pulled into my driveway. I watched through the kitchen window as my mother climbed out. She looked smaller than I remembered. The certainty she used to wear like armor seemed to have worn thin at the edges. I stood at my own front door with my heart hammering against my ribs and tried to decide whether to open it. I opened it. Claire. She looked at me like she was cataloging every change 9 years had made. You look well, Mom. I didn't move aside. What are you doing here? She glanced past me into the house. Can I come in? Every reasonable part of me said no, but I stepped back anyway, because I was raised to be polite. And because some part of me, the 24-year-old girl who'd cried in a parking lot, still wanted her mother. She sat at my kitchen table and folded her hands in front of her, the way she always did when she was about to say something she'd rehearsed. I made coffee not because I wanted to, but because I needed something to do with my hands. Your father is sick, she said. His kidneys. It's serious. I set down the coffee pot. I'm sorry to hear that. He needs help, Claire. She looked up at me. Financial help. The medical bills are we weren't prepared. And the house needs work. Ryan's going through his own troubles right now, and your brother David, well, you know David was never good with money. I stared at her. We thought, she continued carefully, that since you and Marcus have done well, we read that his company was stop. The word came out of me flat and hard. I need you to stop. She blinked. You drove for hours, I said slowly. Not to apologize. Not to meet your grandchildren, who you have never once asked about. Not to tell me you were wrong. You drove here because you need money. Her jaw tightened. I'm still your mother. You stopped acting like it 9 years ago. My voice was steady in a way that surprised me. You told me you couldn't support my marriage. You didn't come to my wedding. You have never called to ask if Zora or Eli exist. You have sent nothing, not a card, not a text, not a single acknowledgement that I built a whole life after you threw me out of yours. We didn't throw you out, Claire. You chose don't. I held up my hand. Don't rewrite it. I was there. She was quiet for a moment. Then something shifted in her expression, something that I think might have been the beginning of real shame. Though she'd waited so long to let it surface that it came out looking like grief. I know we were wrong, she said finally. Her voice was smaller now. I know that. Do you? I asked. Or do you know it because you need something? She didn't answer, which was in itself an answer. I sat down across from her. I looked at this woman who had rocked me to sleep and braided my hair and taught me how to make her cornbread recipe and then told me my love wasn't worth showing up for. I felt every complicated thing a person can feel, grief and anger and pity and love so old it had calcified into something I couldn't name anymore. I'm going to ask Marcus, I said. Not because you deserve it, but because my father is a sick man and I still believe in being decent even when other people weren't. And because my children will know, one day, that their mother didn't let bitterness make her hard. She closed her eyes. But I need you to understand something, I continued. If we help, it's a gift, not a transaction. Not a step toward things going back to how they were, because they can't. You will not walk back into my life and pick up where you left off. If you ever want a relationship with me, with Marcus, with your grandchildren that starts from scratch, it starts with honesty and with time and with a lot of conversations I don't think you're ready for yet. When she left an hour later, she hugged me at the door. It was stiff and unfamiliar, the hug of two people who used to know each other. But she held on for a second longer than I expected. Marcus came home that evening to find me standing at the kitchen sink, staring out at the backyard where Zora was chasing Eli through the grass, both of them shrieking with laughter. He put his hand on my back without saying anything. He's always known when I need the quiet kind of love. She came, he said eventually. She came. You okay? I thought about it honestly. I think so. I think I've been okay for a long time, actually. I just didn't know how much until today. He pressed a kiss to the side of my head. Out in the yard, Eli tripped and fell and Zora immediately stopped running and went back to help him up, her little hand outstretched, her voice carrying through the glass. I got you. I got you. That right there. That was everything my family had tried to stop me from having. Here's what I know now, standing on the other side of all of it. Forgiveness isn't something you give for the other person. It's something you give yourself so that what they did doesn't get to live inside you forever. I haven't fully forgiven my mother yet. Maybe I will. Maybe it will take years of those hard conversations, slow and painful and real. Maybe she'll do the work and maybe she won't, but I am not the girl who cried in that parking lot anymore. I am a woman who chose love over approval and built something so beautiful out of that choice that even the people who tried to take it from me showed up at my door one day, wanting a piece of it. That's not bitterness. That's not revenge. That's just the truth of what happens when you stop living for other people's comfort and start living for your own joy. My name is Claire Okafor, and I wouldn't trade a single day of the life I built.